we decide today we're just gonna have a conversation, Ross, just about whatever issues that we believe our viewers sort of needs to have an understanding of, and we decided to talk about the role of the government.
Here's the number one concern that I'm looking at right now. We see that the governments, meaning the national government and then all the state governments, in their great wisdom, have shut down, first of all, the entire economy, then portions of the economy, and we're seeing a couple 100,000 businesses wink out. They're gone, and they will not be able to ever come back because they now went heavily into debt. They lost their credit, they lost their locations, they lost their following, and there's still no end in sight. But the governments inspired these or forced them, and now we have all these people who are in desperate conditions, some thousands and thousands, maybe millions of people in food lines. In this country, how unacceptable is that? And when we look at the Congress, both Republicans and Democrats, we see virtually no genuine action taking place. Or no one really concerned about we the people.
It really pains me to read when I read articles about what's going on in the U.S., especially with the number of citizens going hungry with nothing to eat for dinner, and it just pains me to read that, because you never think that a country like ours, which by any standards we are considered a rich country, we are encountering this. But again, there are so many elements that plays into this, and politics, the damn politics, comes right at the forefront of all this, because the politicians in Congress are more concerned about their political careers than they are concerned about the welfare and well-being of the American citizens.
And it's not surprising, because the people in the Congress, like all other human beings, are looking out for themselves first. It's a system that rewards them for taking care of themselves, not us.
Yeah. Well, this is where if you had a term limit, you won't have to be dealing with this nonsense. It's because you get individual representatives, rather, when they are approached by lobbyists, for example, and said, "Hey, how would you like to stay in Congress for the next 30 years? We will fund your campaigns every time."
By the way, and you have to vote the way we tell you.
Yeah, and that becomes, do I, representative, do I do what's right by the American people, by my constituents that sent me to Congress, or do I, the representative, do what's right for me, politically speaking, so I can be in Congress for the next 30 years? So if we would have had term limits, we won't be dealing with that issue.
And what about government funding for the campaigns?
Well, thanks to the Supreme Court decision of 2010, United Citizens versus the FCC, the Federal Commission, Election Commission, and so on. So when the Supreme Court itself allow unlimited amount of money to enter politics, and it becomes the question of, if you have more money, that means you have more influence. So the interest and the welfare of that person that does not have money are tossed out. And this is where that corruption comes in.
When that Supreme Court decision went down, it looked to me like we just lost the republic. It's been a decade now. And what I saw at the time was any number of serious people in Congress saying, yeah, well, it's really too bad. And I think they meant it, but they smiled at the same time, so, well, we'll live with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was sad. I remember when I heard about the decision, I just lost all faith in the Supreme Court. So,
do you happen to remember what percentage of the Congress how many people in the United States have actually approved of the Congress?
Oh, I remember one time I read about 7%.
7%.
Yeah.
That means 93% are somewhere between vehemently opposed to them, saying throw the bums out, to they're just unacceptable. 93%, and yet we the people seem to have no say whatsoever.
Well, because you got people just followers. There are some of us just followers. We couldn't even, because again, we don't understand the true content of that first 3 words in the Constitution. We, the people. We don't understand it. So the government takes it upon itself now to just do whatever. Because if I, the government, dictate to you, then that's it. And because that stems from even people being uninformed. They are busy watching the Kardashians, what they eat for breakfast. Why would I care about what the Kardashians eat for breakfast, rather than thinking about what the government's doing? On the other hand, if you think in terms of having a term limit, that I don't care how great you are, there are smart people out there. There are great citizens out there.
Right.
Give them a chance and let's have some new ideas of how to move the country forward. So, why do you need to serve 30 years? Like again, what couldn't you do in 30 that you couldn't do in 10?
I used to work with someone who was retired from the State Department. And he and I had these wonderful conversations. He said, when someone heads up a division of the government, our goal is to put them in there for 18 months and have them do what they can do and then get them out to something else. He said their creative juices, their real productivity, their ability to get something done is done that quickly. So let's put people in Congress for 50 years, 30 years, 20 years. Maybe 20 years is the absolute maximum. Something like that.
Yeah.
But what about, are they really going to be responsive to the people? Are they really going to come up with fresh ideas? Do they have the vitality to do something other than make $110 million for themselves while doing nothing else but being in Congress?
And that also, what's taking place, translates into what it reflects on us as a society. You know, nowadays overseas, you mention America, it's kind of people just shrug their shoulders. It used to be one America that was cherished and respected and adhered to as far as the ideals and so forth. Now it became just another country. And that also stems from that corrupted mindset that we have fallen into. The lack of credibility that we don't have anymore. I look at this recently with the G20 summit that took place in Saudi Arabia. You know, and what a pathetic, because that was hypocrisy at best. When we turn the blind eye on the atrocities the Saudis have committed, you know, and I'm not saying just the Saudis, the Chinese were there also, so they committed also violations on human rights. You know, it's kind of, why aren't we standing up anymore? Because we are concerned about how we're going to be perceived, because we want to ensure the flow of money, and so it becomes greed the guiding principle rather than the ideals on which the United States was founded. And that in itself will be what will destroy America in the long term. Once you start nipping into the foundation, so you think of it like a castle.
Yeah.
Once you start nipping into the foundation, at some point that building is going to collapse. And that's why we are on the path of that, if we don't take corrective actions to fix that.
Let me ask you something that's tangentially related to it, but actually profoundly related to it. We just went through another round of elections.
Mm-hmm.
And I paid particularly close attention to the last several. And this one was so crystal clear. People were so emotional.
Psychologically, the country is going through a phase now where we've been exposed to something unusual that exposed the establishments, if you will.
Yeah.
And we're having a hard time digesting that. But at the same time, most Americans do not understand or know that both political parties, Republicans and Democrats, have been controlling the political process for the last 160 years. You know, the way you look at it like football. We are the football, and one party on one end and the other party on the other end, and you throw the football back and forth. We vote Republicans, we vote Democrats. We vote Republicans, we vote Democrats. Because you have no other choices. There's the control of the process. So when we say, well, so-and-so is bad or so-and-so is bad, we need to take a step back and say, maybe it's the system itself that needs to be overhauled. You know, you think about it from a tax perspective, for example. You know, the taxes, you think about it with healthcare, the education. Maybe it's the system itself. Until we fix it's like, again, a house. If the foundation is not strong, at some point that building's going to...
Oh, absolutely.
Those questions are structural, in the structure of the system itself. Until we get to the bottom of it, nothing's going to change. We're just going to be kicking the can down the road.
I couldn't agree more. And a great place to start would be term limitations.
I think so, Ross. I'm a believer that that will be the first step in the right direction, is to create legislation by which we, the people, decide on a term limit for members of Congress. Because no one, at least in my belief, no one in a democracy should have a lifetime appointment. There is no such thing. We're not a monarchy. And even with a monarchy thing, when you think about all of a sudden the monarch, whatever, how this came to be. So
I was hired by Herb Kelleher at Southwest Airlines for 13 years. I was hired by him, not the airline. And he said, here's what I want. I want someone who'll come in and do these real high-level projects for me to get these things done inside the corporation. I don't want you as an employee, because you'll start forming alliances. You'll start being political. You'll say, well, I can't step on that person because he said, no, I want you to come in as an independent agent because you'll get something. And we did. And we had remarkable success because we weren't part of it for a long time. I got to meet a lot of really wonderful people at Southwest Airlines. And I saw how they had to play politics all day, every day. I didn't have to at all.
That's the unfortunate part. And this one also stems from truly, what is your role in society? What is your contribution to society? Because as you know, we're all driven in our society here by the amount of money you make, the status, the title, all that stuff is gonna fade, is gonna go away. And what's gonna become is your legacy. What have you done for people? What have you done for the average citizen? What have you done for a fellow human being? That's what's gonna be mattering at the end, because when we are all in our bed for the last time we take our breath, we're not gonna be talking about how much money I generate over the years and the parties that I want to and the trophies that I want. I'm gonna be asking the question, what did I accomplish for other fellow humans? That's all it's gonna be. So.
Well, this is just a free conversation. This is the quality of conversation that David and I have very regularly in our efforts to understand what's going on. We are barraged with an enormous amount of data, and we have to cut through what's worthwhile what's real and what's not real, and what's the significance of those things we think are real, and what's the motivation of those people who are gaslighting us or trying to control how we think and how we operate. So this is a sample of our typical daily conversation.
And as always,
stay informed.
till next time.